Hey there, it's Michael. Welcome to Whole Again, the show that's here in support of you creating a meaningful life and the person you're becoming. And I'm excited to share a new series with you that will air this summer as America turns 250 years old, which is still pretty young relative to many other countries across this big blue marble that we all share. The series is called A Perfectly Imperfect Union. In 2022, I rode my bike across America, from Astoria, Oregon to the Lincoln Memorial. My wife drove our RV, and she had two co-pilots, Jester and Hope, two Springer Spaniels. And when we did it, America was coming out of the pandemic, and we were hurting from things that had happened prior to the pandemic. Of course, going through what we all went through. And at that time, and this is something I still believe today, is that we were entering an inflection point. An inflection point for us to hopefully pause, breathe, and reflect on who we wish to become as individuals, as communities, and as a country. As I pedaled across America, I wanted to share America's beauty with others, her natural beauty and the beauty of her people. And I also wanted to share where we were hurting. As America turns 250, I believe Kinstugi, which is something we use as a metaphor here at Whole Again, is a perfect metaphor for where we are as a country. There's so much beauty to celebrate, and we can also acknowledge that parts of us feel broken or are broken, but we can find a way to come back together, just like Kinstugi teaches us. And when we do, we don't try to erase or cover up where we have scars or blemishes. We highlight them in gold, and we celebrate them as symbols of our strength and resilience. Kinstugi is called the golden repair, and in essence, we can see beauty in something that's perfectly imperfect. During this series, I plan to speak to at least two people in each state and the District of Columbia. So 102 conversations with real folk, as I like to say. We're going to let the celebrities and the big influencers have their day somewhere else. But here, I want to reach out and talk to real people and listen to their reflections as they think about America turning 250 years old. And my hope is that you'll tune in to at least one, if not all 102. Because my theory going into this is that you'll hear different perspectives. Some may be aligned with yours. Others may not. But my hope is that you hear the goodness in your fellow citizens and realize, as Maya Angelou shared with us, we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. I've had the privilege of traveling all over the world and all over this country. And this belief is something that I hold deep inside of me. So yes, I do believe that we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. So if you're ready to meet one of your fellow neighbors who, like all of us, is perfectly imperfect, take a healthy breath in and a slow, releasing breath out. And get to know Lloyd Banwart. Lloyd, my friend, thank you for joining me on a Perfectly Imperfect Union series. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling really good. I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, I love people can't see this because we're only going to share the audio. But as we talked about before we hit record, you have a banner right above your head that I can see saying "You'll never walk alone," which is a Liverpool reference. So, are you excited about the World Cup? Where are you on the excitement meter of the World Cup starting here, only a few short days away from the day we're recording this?
Yeah, 2 days away. The excitement level's high in my household. I got a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old boy who are full on obsessed with soccer. I tend to be more of a club person myself, but I mean, I love what the World Cup represents, and I think in a way, it's just like your series here. It's just bringing together all sorts of communities from around the world. So for that aspect, I'm incredibly excited. The World
Yeah,
Cup.
absolutely. Well, it's happening in our backyard. We're only about 35 minutes away from MetLife, where the finals will actually take place. We will not be anywhere near the arena on that day. We'll be watching it comfortably from our own living room. So, for those that don't know you, Lloyd, can you take a moment to introduce yourself? Who the heck are you, and where are you calling in from?
Yeah, my name's Lloyd Banwart. I'm from the Midwest. So I was born in South Dakota, raised in Wisconsin, and I currently reside in the great state of Minnesota. This is my third stretch living here, and as I often joke around, third and probably last because I expect to be here forever. Um, I'm a Midwestern farm kid. I grew up on a small horse farm. I meat and potatoes family. Never left the country or was on an airplane until my late teens. I served in the U.S. Peace Corps for 3 years in the Philippines. And since then, for the last 20 odd years, I've been working in humanitarian response and international development. And now I'm working for a foundation here in Minnesota that funds a pretty eclectic range of causes. But it's as I'll get to later, it really is representative of all that Minnesota is and the community that Minnesota represents. So yeah, and of course, as my often my bio say, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a Liverpool fan, as you noted earlier, a cook, a bicyclist, a runner. So I'm a bunch of different things, like we all are.
As we all are, and I can appreciate the whole didn't leave this country until as you got a little bit older. I didn't have my first passport until we got engaged. I went to Canada, but that was pretty easy before 9/11. You could just drive over. But beyond that, I never left the country until we got married. And so I can totally appreciate where you're coming from. So for those that don't know Minnesota, what is something cool? Well, it's cold, but cool in a fascinating, special way.
It's only cold for 7 months a year. So
Fair enough.
Minnesota,
Fair enough.
5 months that we sweat a lot too, and so we earn that time. Minnesota has a lot of facets. A lot of people know it for its 10,000 lakes, and I will lean into that space. So I've had the privilege over my career to travel over 40 countries, 5 continents, and without a doubt, my favorite place in the world on the planet is the Boundary Waters Canoe area, which is the northern edge of Minnesota, it borders Canada, right on the edge of where Lake Superior kind of starts to filter out, heading west, and it's just thousands upon thousands of lakes and tributaries and rivers and streams. Yeah, there's no motors allowed. If you define quiet by the lack of human generated noise, it's one of the top quiet places on the planet. And I actually just spent the weekend there with my two young boys. So um, really feel extra grateful for that access to that today.
Yeah, there's something about being in nature that feels so grounding. I love it. I love it. Is there anything that people get wrong about Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole Minnesota nice, right? Where I think a lot of people can assume that as a bit of passive aggression, Um, and there might be some truth to that, to be totally honest. But I mean, genuinely, I think, Minnesota, back to where I think we'll lead our conversation today. When you meet people one on one over a table or a cup of coffee, people are genuinely nice. Like, I mean, it's still a state and And there's probably truth to this too, even from your own bicycle trip, Michael, where if you get a flat tire on the side of the road, somebody's probably going to stop and ask you if they can give you a hand, right?
Yeah,
And that's something I just really appreciate about living here.
that's very cool. So speaking of like getting together with people, so let's say you're out out on the canoe, or maybe not on the canoe, but you're back on shore, you're having a picnic, you have some family, friends, neighbors around, and they ask you what America means to you. How do you respond to that question?
Yeah, it means a lot to me. I mean, as I believe deeply, even as I say that out loud, I get a little emotional about it, about like
Sure.
the idea of what America can be. For me, America is all about trying to be better than we are today, and the imperfection that comes from that, and I mean, there's all the cliches about, what is the American dream and the land of opportunity. But for me, it's every single day we wake up and we try to be a bit better than we were the day before with all the context. And I tried to live into that with the Peace Corps and with my career. But I see that like in a small farming community I grew up in, like people just wake up every day and they just want to have the chance to do a little bit better than yesterday. And I mean, if we're fully honest with ourselves as a country, I think there's been periods of time and chapters where we haven't fully done that. But there's always tomorrow, and we can always do better the next day. So for me, America's that opportunity.
Yeah, we can be hopeful and put in the work to create
Yeah.
a better tomorrow for all of us, not just some of us. I like where you're going with that. So most of us have some type of family story as it relates to this country or this land. It's a country of immigrants.
hmm
And so, do you know much about your family's origin story to this country and this land at all?
Yeah. I'm pretty lucky in that I know quite a bit. I grew up in an 1884 farmhouse, all brick.
Wow, how
Um,
cool.
My dad has kind of remodeled the whole inside of it, and when you walk into this farmhouse, on the walls, my folks have portraits of my mom's side and my dad's side going back to the generations that never even came to America
Whoa.
from Eastern Europe, and every generation on. Um, we often joke, "What's gonna?" It kind of looks like you're going through this portrait gallery as you walk in, and so my family has always kind of held those roots closely on both sides, again, my mom and my dad's, and so they would tell stories about the recipe we're eating has came from the Blythes, which never actually came over to America, and you look at my dad's brother, who looks so much like my great-great-grandfather, and you see these pictures on the wall, and they're nearly, these identical siblings in ways, so to just see that history lived is really amazing, and then in my marriage, I have the opposite side of that, right? So my wife is Filipino. Her parents immigrated to the US in the
Oh,
70s.
wow.
And so weirdly enough, I met my wife while I was in Peace Corps. But she
Cool.
was visiting relatives on the island I was serving. So her mom and dad grew up in the city that was about an hour from where I did my Peace Corps service. And I was like, who's the cute Filipino with a Midwestern accent? And we just kind of, this is pre-smartphone days, so we became pen pals for a while. And
Oh, wow,
um,
that's such a blast from the past, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so, yeah, in our home, we hold that, they go home my kids go home to my mom and dad's, and they have this portrait gallery of all this history, and then they also have an immigrant family of, my wife's mother, who's just this powerhouse of a woman who sponsored all of her siblings to move to America and Canada and Guam, all on her own from very meager beginnings in the Philippines, so and I think that juxtaposition, that's America, right? And it's cool.
That is cool, that is cool. Well, in the public square, if you will, there's much debate about AI. So I'm asking people, "Hey, what's your take on it?" Because there's that camp of, like, it's gonna liberate us all. There's a camp of it's going to destroy us all, and there's probably a lot of gray space that it depends. So do you have a take on AI? Where do you stand with it as it relates to it today?
Yeah, so I'm actually a researcher and applied economist by training. And from a certain vantage point, I look at AI in total awe and wonder. Like, how does it do the things it does? Like, it can do in a second what used to take me a week to do a literature
Sure.
review, right? Like, and I use it. I'm an avid user of it now because it's hard to do the type of work I do without it. And in the same breath, I'm terrified of it, and I'm terrified of what it's bringing to our country and to I'm not sure that we're quite mature enough with our political systems for what AI may be about to unleash in terms of the effects on the economy and communities. I don't have the answers. All I can say is I have to hold both those things at the same time. I can be in awe and I can be really scared simultaneously.
I think I share that space with you. I'm in awe,
Okay.
and also I'm terrified. And it's the yo-yo of like up and down, or left and right, crisscross, loop-de-loops, the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I share that. So you mentioned this quality of Americans that we want to create a better tomorrow. So I use, as you know, Kinstugi as a metaphor for my overall podcast, Whole Again, in this series. And it really tries to get to that, hey, we have a past. It's not necessarily perfect, but we can find a way to connect and heal and grow again. So if you took just one thing that you wanted to address, that you could, well, choose the verb fix or grow or heal, whatever verb actually suits your fancy,
Yeah.
and you would take a meaningful step towards that healing process. It may not be perfect, but it's a good first step. What would it be?
Yeah, I actually have thought a lot about this in the last few days. I mean, for me, it comes back to I'd love to flip the switch off on the interaction on social media and screens and back to just humans to be able to sit over a table and have a cup of coffee or a beer or share a meal.
Sure.
It's just if we can go back to that version of community where you're disagreeing with somebody, but after you disagree with them, you actually have to sit in the same space, in the same room with them and understand who they are as a person. It all of a sudden becomes a little harder to disagree with them and then, I mean, it's a strong word, but hate them in the same breath,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
no, you begin to learn who they are as a person. Um, and so yeah, it's not an easy I know that I can never turn the switch off and get rid of and have people stopping to interact in comment sections and online forums and social media, but if we go back to a little bit more analog, in-person, real relationship in communities, I think it would go a long ways.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And I think we could take small steps. Sometimes when the problem feels so big, we can get paralyzed. It's like, problem's so big. Like, why even start? And my feeling is we didn't get here overnight. So let's take a small step and do that small step consistently. And then we'll look back maybe over a month or a quarter or half a year and see, okay, we're making progress. We just got to stick with it. So, but I like what you're saying.
And you even we didn't get here overnight, but in a way, it kinda did happen over the smartphone's less than 20 years old, right? Like, we
Sure.
have
Yeah.
the total capacity to I begin to bel in our lifespan still, yours and mine, to see changes of going back to community and meeting people in person, in a church basement or at your local kind of, businesses, etcetera. So, yeah, I agree. It is baby steps and just being willing to share the same air with folks.
Yeah. As you bring that up, Lloyd, I'm thinking about the book, Bowling Alone, that
Mm,
talked about culture and growing up in upstate New York as a bowler. I come from a bowling family, but you go into the bowling hall and you would spend hours with people, and it was one way to connect in an analog way, and it definitely helped build connection and community.
mhm,
So one question I'm asking folks, since it is a birthday, as America turns
mhm.
250 this year, we usually serve cake, although cake is not necessarily everyone's jam. So a two-part question for you. What kind of cake are you serving for America's 250th? And as we blow out the candles, what's your greatest wish for the country?
So definitely the cake is going to be. I'm not the biggest. I'm a savory guy. I'm a sweet salt, or I'm a salty
All
savory,
right.
right? Not
Okay.
sweet, which is altered to everybody else in my home. But red velvet with a nice cream cheese frosting. I mean, I am kind of a sucker for that. Um, and I think my wish would just be grace. Like,
Grace. Yeah.
not expecting to agree with everyone or like everyone or everything, but just to offer each other some grace and humanity.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you on that. I came up with an acronym for grace when I was going through my recovery. And so it's gratitude, reframing, awareness, community, and energy. And so
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, since was a corporate guy at the time of my accident, I got paid to create acronyms. So that was mine. That definitely helped me get through some of the most challenging days. So, but I love that the extension of grace, not only to others, but also sometimes to ourselves, because we can be really harsh with ourselves. So one of the things we'll round out our conversation here. I've been asking the person I connected with prior to our time right now to see if they had a question for you. So I talked to Kimberly from Wyoming, and her question is very Minnesota specific. So she's quite curious because as Minnesota and Minneapolis folks there really stood up during the winter to ice and really from her perspective like stood up for their neighbors. And her experience is that she talked about what was happening in Minnesota with her friends almost every day. And so she experienced it from her farm or her ranch in Wyoming. What she's curious about is what was your experience going through that living in the state?
Yeah, let's see if I can get through this one without being too emotional. It was intense, right? And all the things we talked about already today in terms of community and real community, I think that's what Minnesota brings to
Hmm.
each other. Let me set the table a little here. I live kind of in the outer suburbs of St. Paul. So I live what feels like a rural life, but I'm miles from the real suburbia.
Sure.
And my closest friends actually live in South Minneapolis, where Operation Metro Surge was at its peak. My boys, so boys of color, brown, go to a Spanish immersion school, um, and that in my in-laws, speak with very heavy accents, and my wife and I, there was periods of time, weeks, where we were terrified that my in-laws were going to get stopped and detained. And my father-in-law in particular is a very quiet person, and it was absolutely terrifying, right? And the peak of that fear for me was the day I got a message from my children's school that they had gone into lockdown
Mm,
because ICE was outside the school.
mm.
Um, yeah, that feeling as a parent to fear for your children and not knowing their psychological safety, their physical safety, because of all of the events that had led to that was really terrifying for my wife and I.
Yeah. It's still with you, and it's still with you as it's so natural that it would be.
Yeah, and I say all that because we come at it from a complete position of privilege, right? My wife and I have um, incredible jobs where kids go to a very good school with a community that truly supports us, and that was my experience as a white male navigating it. So imagine there are so many households in this city that didn't have the position of privilege to navigate that had to also go through that. And the level of courage that those families have, it's amazing.
Hmm. We'll just let It's a podcast, but we'll let that sit for a bit. So sometimes with a podcast, you feel like the need to like fill all the space, but that was an intense period. So Thanks for sharing that, Lloyd. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So, what question do you have for the next person I chat with?
Well, I'm gonna keep on the theme, I guess. I would love to hear about a time that a conversation, a real world analog conversation, changed their perspective or their mind on something, anything.
Very cool. Well, I will ask the next person I chat with on our series, one of your fellow neighbors, that very question. So, and I appreciate you joining me, man, for this and the ripple effect that you're putting not only into your state, but into the world. So, thanks for being here, Lloyd.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael.
If you've been listening to this podcast for a bit or follow my work in a different way, you know I love to talk about how we shouldn't cling to anything too tightly, including our ideas or perspectives. So I appreciate Lloyd's question. That question around when have you basically changed your mind based on a conversation? One of our greatest addictions, I believe, and we have many here, is our addiction to being right. So I plan to ask Kyle, who is our next neighbor in our series, Lloyd's question to him, but I also think it's a good one to reflect on for yourself. When was the last time you changed your mind or perspective based on a conversation you had? Let me know. I'm curious about what it might be. And as always, thanks for listening. Thank you for being here and helping us become a more perfectly imperfect union. And I hope you'll check out our next episode on Whole Again, which is coming up tomorrow. Until then, let's celebrate our scars as golden symbols of our strength and resilience. And don't forget to have fun storming the castle. And if you wish to learn more about creating beautiful ripples and how to prevent a bad moment from turning into a bad day, please visit my website, michaelobrienshift.com, and sign up for my newsletter called The Ripple Effect. And join us each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here at Whole Again and discover how you can heal, grow, and become more resilient. And celebrate our scars as golden symbols of strength and resilience. Until then, remember, you can always come back to your breath. You've got this, and we've got you.